Good evening from New York. As if to disprove his own claim that only enhanced interrogation methods produce the truth, former Vice President Cheney continues to tell the truth about torture under the gentlest of interrogations. Our fifth story on the countdown, the Dick Cheney confession tour continues, with the subject offering up new intelligence, even ratting out one of his own masterminds. Well, Mr. Bush. Mr. Cheney, in fact, not only still calling for further declassification of CIA documents, but joining much of the Democratic left in demanding a full accounting for what intelligence torture produced and how. The White House now, according to the Washington Post, prepared to release a 2004 CIA Inspector General's report on torture that congressional sources told the Plumline blog constitutes the holy grail of torture information. It will address Mr. Cheney's claim, which he says the CIA documents prove that torture saved lives. But some of that 2004 IG report is already out. And while most of it remains redacted, parts of it were summarized by Justice Department lawyers elsewhere, parts relevant to Mr. Cheney's claim that torture worked. Quote, as the IG report notes, it is difficult to determine conclusively whether interrogations have provided information critical to interdicting specific imminent attack. Asked whether he would cooperate with a congressional investigation, Mr. Cheney said, in essence, why not? Admitting overtly that no one else is out there defending him.
There are all kinds of people talking about various kinds of investigations. Sure. Would you go back and talk to the Congress?
Certainly. I've made it very clear that I feel very strongly that what we did here was exactly the right thing to do. And if I don't speak out, then where do we find ourselves, Bob? Then the critics have a free run, and there isn't anybody there on the other side to tell the truth. It's important that we...
Senator Leahy, the chairman of the Judiciary Committee, was on this broadcast recently, and I said, do you intend to ask the former vice president to come up? And he said, if he will testify under oath, would you be willing to testify under oath?
Well, I'd have to see what the circumstances are and what kind of precedent we were setting. But certainly I wouldn't be out here today if I didn't feel comfortable talking about what we're doing publicly. I think it's very, very important that we have a clear understanding that what happened here was an honorable approach to defending the nation, that there was nothing devious or deceitful or dishonest or illegal about what was done.
An honorable approach to defending the nation, again from that so-called Holy Grail. A quote, according to the CIA's IG report, the CIA, at least initially, could not always distinguish detainees who had information but were successfully resisting interrogation from those who did not actually have the information. On at least one occasion, this may have resulted in what might be deemed in retrospect to have been the unnecessary use of enhanced techniques. On that occasion, although the on-scene interrogation team judged Zubaydah to be compliant, elements within CIA headquarters still believed he was withholding information. At the direction of CIA headquarters, interrogators therefore used the waterboard one more time on Zubaydah, even though even Mr. Cheney gave up his own co-conspirators without waterboarding.
Did President Bush know everything you knew?
I certainly, have every reason to believe he knew a great deal about the program. He basically authorized it. I mean, this was a presidential level decision, and the decision went to the president. He signed off on it.
As the buck gets passed, let's turn to Jonathan Turley, professor of constitutional law at George Washington University. Thanks for your time tonight, John.
Hi, Keith.
First, your read on that, on Mr. Cheney implicating Mr. Bush. Is he betraying him, or is he sort of dragging him in as a human shield? What's going on there?
Well, you can almost hear the Bush lawyers scratching off a line on the page saying, well, there goes that defense. I mean, he's really almost becoming the Martha Mitchell of this administration, going out and every time he's on TV, flailing about, he's making the legal case all the stronger for a criminal investigation and prosecution. And whatever his motives were, he most certainly just supplied a critical block that would have been the subject of an investigation. We've now almost had the entire puzzle. You now have Dick Cheney saying, yeah, the guy who approved this, the guy who knew about it, was my immediate boss, George W. Bush. And he knew a lot about the torture program.
Well, it's very nice, but Mr. Schieffer did not read his rights to Mr. Cheney before that interview. Can anything he said be used in any way against him in a court of law, international, domestic, or extraterrestrial?
Everything can be used. That's the reason why, as a criminal defense lawyer, many of us will be, holding on to our clients before they get in front of a camera, because everything they say can indeed be used against them. They do not get Miranda from private parties or from the media. And what's fascinating about this is you just had my majority leader, Harry Reid, give an interview saying that he just doesn't know what the facts are or whether there's enough facts to have a criminal investigation. And only a few days after that rather implausible and I might say laughable interview, you've got Dick Cheney saying, yeah, here's how it went. The president knew about it, authorized it. I was all in favor of it. We did it. We're glad we did it. We have no regrets. We'd do it again. And so the question for people like Reid, again, is what are you exactly waiting for? I mean, if he says videos, the fact is the CIA destroyed those videos because they said that they were afraid they'd be used against them.
Well, I mean, the only thing left for Dick Cheney to say is, I know they destroyed the videos, but I have a DVD collection in my house, which I can give you. That's about all that's missing for this. But now, is this too far from the legal path? Does defending his involvement in the torture program now in any way constitute an addition to the conspiracy to get away with torture? Is any of this illegal right now?
Well, what it does do in terms of evidence against him is it shows that this whole focus on whether torture works is expressly prohibited as a defense under these various laws. And so even after he has been accused by the Red Cross, by Bush officials, by Bush interrogators, by this wide array of NGOs and experts of this torture program, his primary defense is still, it worked. And that defense is considered the worst thing you could possibly say about a torture program. It doesn't matter if it works or does not work. You're not allowed to do it. It's like saying, I robbed a bank, but I got away with it, or I used the money in a good way. It doesn't matter. What you did was a crime. And so, yes, in the trial, these interviews could be used against him. They'd be a very powerful tool in front of a jury to show how craven this administration was and how craven these officials remain.
Does he have as powerful a tool in his defense as he thinks he has in these DOJ Office of Legal Counsel memos? Do we have any idea if those are the magic shield he's portraying them as?
No, we deal with this all the time in the law. First of all, as you know, as we talked about earlier, we rejected this as the United States of America in World War II when Nazi judges and Nazi lawyers said we were applying the law as best as we thought it should be applied. We rejected that and said this was a transparent application of violations of human rights, of violations of international law, of war crimes. So we set that precedent. But more importantly, this torture program began before these memos were written.
Right.
The memos themselves were laughable and transparent. You can't rely on these types of memos for a war crime. Otherwise, you could get any mouthpiece, any sycophant to write a memo and commit war crimes. People in Serbia, in Germany, in all these other countries, they had plenty of lawyers that said they could do what they did. And we rejected those as defense as we have to. Otherwise, you just hire one lawyer and commit any war crime.
Well, they may have hired a few, but here becomes the final question of this. If the sycophant in the equation is actually working directly under Dick Cheney's instructions, if that's what's also contained in these remaining unreleased memos, how would that change the legal contour here if he is, in fact, the one who had these memos written that would essentially also rob interrogators of their legal rights to say, no, this is illegal, I'm not doing it, when somebody can hold them a piece of paper up and say, well, look, it says here, according to Dick Cheney's lawyer, it says this is legal, you have to do it.
Well, I think that's the issue, that what we have here is a very clear conspiracy to commit a war crime, that these people are not stupid. They just had no morals. And so what they set about to do is to usurp the Democratic leadership, bring them in, get lawyers to say it was okay. It was a broad conspiracy to commit a war crime, which remains a crime. And the people who committed it remain criminals. It's just no one's investigating them.
Well, there's one channel seems to be begging for an investigation. Those are the people who did it, and the other channel does not seem to want it at all investigated, and those are the ones in power now. We'll see if that incredible through the looking glass quality continues, and when it does or doesn't, we will return again to George Washington University law professor Jonathan Turley. As always, John, great thanks.